Howdy.
Okay, we're rolling.
All right, this is the script for remotely conducted open meetings. I'll be confirming member access later on as a preliminary matter. This is the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board, Chairman Andy Lowell, to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. And anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative. Introduction to the remote meeting. Good afternoon. This open meeting of the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. For Zoom meetings, please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. Meeting business ground rules. We're now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public that have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged by and speak through the chair. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. I see with us tonight, we have Mr. Brace, confirm.
Aye.
I see Mr. Sadowski, confirm, please.
Yes.
Mr. Bossy,
Yes.
Mr. Franzuto,
He's on mute.
Dave,
You're on mute, Dave.
Yes.
all right, thank you, Dave. Ginger, is that you?
This is me. I'm here.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tara from Natural Resources.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Anybody else? I see Kona's with us. Thank you, Kona, for joining. I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board, January 5th, 2021. Can I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
So moved. Sorry.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Mr.
Aye.
Brace,
Aye.
Mr.
Aye.
Bossy,
Aye.
Mr. Sadowski,
Aye.
Mr. Franzuto,
Aye.
Ms. Andrews.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Approval of minutes from draft minutes of December 5th, 2020. Do we have any revisions need to be made, changes, clarifications? Speak now, board members. If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from December 5th, 2020.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Sidlowski. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Franzuto. All in favor? Mr. Brace,
Aye.
Mr. Bossy,
Aye.
Mr. Lowell, aye. Motion's unanimous to approve the minutes, December 5th. I have nothing to report in the chairman's report. Marine Department report. We have anybody from the Marine Department present, Mr. Brace?
No, we don't.
Natural Resources report. Good evening, Tara.
Hello, everyone. Well, I think, we're just like everybody else, just getting back off of break and school starting back up and everything. But I did talk to Jeff today, and he said that there were still about 15 or 20 boats going off and on, about 2 or 3 in Mattakit. The rest in Nantucket Harbor, it seems like everyone is still getting their limit by 10:30 or 11. And there are some boats that are getting their double limit and coming in slightly later than that. We haven't lost any days with a red flag due to weather. It's been really pretty warm, although it's been windy. So that part's been good. And then as far as the hatchery goes, we're starting up the hatchery this week with inoculating our algae into bigger containers and kind of reassembling everything for the season. So we'll be getting shellfish in shortly as soon as we get our algae growing. We've just been doing a lot of repairs. We had some sealing work done and that sort of thing. So nothing very exciting going on around here except for maintenance and startup work.
Thank you, Tara. Board members, any questions, comments for Natural Resources? Not seeing any. We'll move forward to public comment on Marine Department or Natural Resources. Any comments from the public? Not seeing any. We'll move right into old business with board regulation revisions. I'd like to thank, on behalf of the board, Mr. Brace for working on this. And does anybody have changes they'd like to make, alterations?
Do you want me to put the form up? That
Does everybody have a copy?
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Peter, Mr. Chairman, I asked Peter a
Mr.
question.
Franzuto.
Peter, did you get that one change that I had just a couple hours ago?
I didn't see it.
Okay, I sent it to you in email. Just change. It's in that compliance section. That should be that they revoke the mooring permit.
Okay. I'll check my email, Dave.
Yeah, it had something about marina, something or other, but it's in that third to last paragraph. But other than that, I thought it looked great.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree as well. I'd like to simply poll the board on this thought. Right in the beginning, a prohibition on subletting moorings and all vessels moored in Nantucket harbors being used as Airbnbs. With our concerns for the health of the harbor and its continued decline in health, I just wonder if we should add in there that with the declining health of the harbor, we feel that added use in this manner should be restricted until things seem to improve. I don't know, how the board, feels about. I don't want to make things too wordy either. So sometimes I feel like we need to have a reason, and that's the only thing that kind of stood out to me. But otherwise, if the board feels it's good the way it is, I'm fine with that as well. Comments, anybody?
Yeah,
Mr.
Mr. Chairman.
Franzuto?
I just think that the Airbnb is kind of a tag along. I just, if you enforce the no subletting of moorings, which is what's in the regulation, then then the Airbnbs would be prohibited. So I think we just need to, the point that needs to be made strongly is that subletting moorings is illegal. Whether it's an Airbnb or
Right.
me subletting it to Dave Bossy.
Okay,
So,
let's
you
keep
know,
it the way it is.
yeah, I think that's the strong,
Yeah.
and I also, well, I think that once we get finalized and this thing goes out to the mooring holders or the liveaboards, that a copy of the regulations gets attached.
Yeah,
I just want to,
Mr. Grace.
I agree with everything you said, Dave. I just think you should clarify. It should clarify. It should say, including Airbnb. You should have that in there so
Oh.
there's no misunderstanding.
I think that's what,
Oh,
right, I think that's what Dave's saying. Yeah.
Oh, I agree. I agree. Right. Dave Bossy's right, including Airbnb. Just because that too is one of the other issues, and that puts a fine point on that then too. That's good, Peter. I think that's a good way to do that.
Anybody else? Ginger, did you have something you wanted to add?
Oh, I don't have anything to add. I just was wanting to know if Ms. Lucy had agreed with the substance of it.
Mr. Brace, would you like to answer that?
Ms. Andrews, we're what I created was a draft, and so we're refining the form, and we haven't showed it to her yet. We want to make sure that we know what we want to say is on the form, as well as the other document, which will be the letter that we'll send to her and saying, this is what we would like to do. Then here's the form. And so we'd rather come up with what we want to say to her rather than have her involved with, I mean, we're anyway. She has
Mr.
ideas.
Franzuto?
Yeah. To that point, Peter, your letter to her that's going to go with this, I thought was very tactfully worded, very well worded.
Well, thanks. Don't want to get her
Well, yeah.
on edge.
We're trying to steer the best we can, I guess.
Right. She needs to know that we all need her, but we don't need to get her all worked up over nothing. We're just going to say, look, here, we're doing our job. We're recommending to you to do these things. We can't make you do them, but this is how the board feels, and that carries weight, hopefully, in her world.
Yep.
So.
Well, and so that Ginger knows, I believe, and the rest of the board as well, when this is complete, I will personally deliver this to Sheila, drop it on her desk, I believe, and to be sure she's got it. And she herself had some revisions to make about the Airbnb, which she hasn't revealed to us. We've put in how we feel about Airbnb, and all we can do is see how she reacts in the future. Ginger?
Yeah, no, okay. Thanks for the clarification.
Okay. Anything else? Board members on liveaboard regulation revisions?
So
Mr.
how the
Brace?
form looks now is how we all agree it should look. So it with the additional change that Dave said, it satisfies us in terms of what we want to do.
Yes, sir. Yes. Mr.
I do want to
Boswell?
make a motion to accept that accept all the changes that are in there and move ahead with that and the letter. I think that
Motion's been made by Mr. Bossy. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Franzuto seconds it. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Yes,
Mr. Brace?
as long as, I gotta look at the form and then make sure that the letter that I send to her reflects the form and formalize it a little bit more. And of course, put her title and her address and the date and sincerely the heart, all that stuff, all the formal stuff. And so if the board trusts me to make it look pretty, then I could just go ahead and produce it and deliver it to Mr. Lowell, and he can deliver it to Sheila.
Sounds
I
great.
wanted to add, I wanted to add that too, that it would be hand delivered. I think that's certainly a good idea to do that. Andy, so you know, to deliver this to her, so you can explain to her our position,
Yes. Yes. Thanks,
our
Mr.
intent, not our position, our intent.
All right. Okay, so the motion's been made by Mr. Bossy, seconded by Mr. Franzuto to approve this draft letter for liverboard regulations. Any more discussion? If not, do we, all in favor, Mr. Brace,
Aye,
Mr. Sidlowski,
hey, Tom, you're muted.
Ms. Andrews,
Aye.
Mr. Lowell votes aye. Mr. Sidlowski? Maybe he
You
had
may
to,
have stepped away.
yeah.
Did you ask Dave Franzuto?
Mr. Franzuto seconded.
Okay,
Mr. Bossy made the motion. I'm reluctant until we hear from Mr. Sidlowski. Shall we postpone the vote until he returns?
sure.
Is there a way we should do this? Because I feel we're in limbo in the middle of a vote.
Well, I think you could just call for a revote, even though it did pass. We
Okay.
want, you know, or
Okay.
you could call for an affirmation, I guess.
All right, we'll put on hold finalizing the vote, and we'll move forward to land bank, Petro landing plans.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Franzuto.
there again, I think, Peter, you captured what we all said, or what I said anyway,
Yeah, me too.
perfectly and tactfully. And I would have no reservations with sending that letter out either, unless the board's got some other changes they want to make, but I thought it was great.
I just want to make sure that it's, and I just jammed it out this morning because I had other stuff to move on to. And so I started it last night, finished it this morning. So I'd probably go through it a few more times to make it right. But I want to make sure that I clarify, Andy, you said in the minutes that it's a 30-minute limit for a dinghy tied up at this dock that the land bank wants to build. And but if it's tied up, I thought it was no unattended dinghies. Is that correct?
No unattended motor vessels.
Oh, okay.
It's a 30-minute limit for motor vessels.
Okay, so that kind of leaves the door open for, a charter boat and his crew to come in and unload passengers or unload fish or whatever like that. One person's on the boat making sure that everything's okay. So it kind of leaves the window open for that to happen.
Yes.
And that's good.
But
That's good, right.
but there's no place that's really open to the public that's that close to the Stop and Shop. So it makes perfect sense that someone should have a little time to run in and get groceries, or run over to the lobster trap and have a meal. So
I agree. Or
Mr. Chairman?
Pick up takeout. Ms. Andrews?
Yeah, it was not clear to me from the discussion before that that dinghies could be left unattended, and a 30-minute limit on dinghies seemed, pretty ridiculous to me. So I'm glad that part is clarified. That wasn't what I got off of reading the thing, but it was a while ago, because you can't even get into the post office in 30 minutes sometimes.
Right.
So,
Right.
forget shopping. Try on one glove or half a pair of pants. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. One comment we've discussed the other commercial activities that are on land bank property. And it occurred to me that there's possibly some kind of a nonprofit fig leaf that they're able to take advantage of, and that it would be worth looking into how they actually got to do those things, and see if we could find a way to make it work
well,
for commercial activity. Sorry. I'm sorry. The sun goes down. I don't recall being quite as crabby as I sounded in the minutes last meeting, but maybe I was. That was the commercial aspect of it.
Mr. Chairman, through you,
Right.
Ms. Andrews, I'm going to be walking a fine line here because I happen to be one of those entities that conducts commercial activities on land bank property as I guide natural history hikes on conservation land. And I know from going through the process and going before the commission and presenting my idea that the land bank, and also being involved with keeping my bees at a sustainable Nantucket's farm, that they have strict parameters, which I think they adhere pretty well to, of what falls within their mission. And waterfront access, acquisition and creation of, they allow, obviously. I guess I fit into their mission because I'm taking people out on their properties and telling people about their land and the wildlife. And don't ask me how Gary Conner got permission to have his business on land bank property at Cisco Beach, but he got that. The land bank, as I said, puts the dinghy docks at the two locations and facilitates fishing activities. So it's, I guess what I was trying to do in the letter was make the case that, look, you guys are all about the water, and fishermen, and excuse my French, but who gives a flying F about, people coming off a big, big boat who wants to go in, and why shouldn't, I don't know. But that's why I was trying to be tactful, because their whole, plan now exists as a result of what neighbors said about it originally. So there's only so much we can push them to do, and if they do anything at all. So, all right.
Mr. Bossy.
Dave, I'm sorry. I had proposed this, and I just saw a change in here. I had proposed the 40 feet, a 40-foot section for the loading and unloading of catch. And I see it called specifically for commercial use, and I didn't intend that. I intended any water use, private and commercial. I was leaving it open, not excluding anybody from using that for the loading and unloading of equipment and catch. I was trying to be specific that it wasn't to be used for this area for the loading and unloading of passengers. Obviously, if there's going to be a dock master there, supposedly, and if there is a dock master there and they have this empty 40-foot section and they have somebody who wants to pull up and say, everything's full, I'd like to unload my sure, go ahead and unload, but you can't stay here. This is not a parking area.
No,
I wanted 40 feet available so that if Tom wanted to be out fishing and he comes in and wants to unload his catch, he can unload his catch. He can have somebody drive the car up and meet him, unload, and go back and do whatever with the boat. It doesn't have to, and same thing with the commercial people. It should be anybody. It's just a 40-foot section dedicated to transient catch, working boats, be they commercial or private.
Mr. Franzuto.
I think that's perfect. I think that's exactly right. And again, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Tom wants to come in and run up to Stop and Shop and grab a couple sandwiches and you can do that. There's no place to do that unless you walk 870 feet down to Town Pier. So I think that Dave, that's exactly what it should be. Just loading and unloading. And if scallopers want to offload or if a charter boat wants to come in and pick up passengers and, maybe they launched from the White Elephant and somebody called and they got to pick somebody else up, whatever, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Just so it's available. And again, Peter, back to what you were saying, I understand there's a fine line here, but we're kind of reclocking and to be sensitive to what the hell that they went through with their neighbors.
Right.
And again, that's what I was saying. The way you worded it, I thought was great. Maybe they're not going to do anything. I mean, this has been 10 years in coming, but at least we're expressing our concerns, and I think they're good proposals that we're putting forward. And let's maybe a comment in there that we'd be more than happy to meet with them to discuss further. I think this is a great step in the right direction.
All right. I was in our discussion at our last meeting. My mindset was more, let's try to ease into the commercial end of things, because it sounded like the land bank was pretty firmly against commercial use. And I just want to read the first full sentence on the second page. However, since those property owners, being the abutters who are against it, probably don't reside on Nantucket during the off-season, we ask that the land bank consider allowing the use of petrol landing by commercial fishermen year-round and commercial scallopers during the commercial scallop season, November 1st to March 31st. I was under the impression we were going to start by requesting commercial use during scallop season only, and try
Okay.
to get a slow start into commercial use, whereas they don't want it at all. I have one concern with charter fishermen finding this to be so convenient that they start making a habit of dropping off and picking up 2 to 3 tours each day from this pier, and eventually possibly ruining the opportunity for what I would call a more hands-on commercial fisherman like scallopers.
Okay.
Well, to that point, these commercial charter guys have their signs at their slips.
I'm
Yeah.
thinking more of the guys on the town pier that have,
But
there's a
they
long
have-
walk to the town pier, and they could simply
no,
tell their client, meet us at this pier.
no, but the commercial slips for the town pier are on the floating dock,
Yes.
and that's not a hike.
No.
And, they're gonna, that's where they advertise to. That's where they pick the people up. I don't see it a commercial. I agree with you that we got to ease into it, but I don't see a charter guy saying, pick me up at the new dinghy dock at the land bank property, because people aren't going to know. The guy who comes here or rents a charter for a day or a trip, he's not going to know all that, and he's not.
All right. He's
parked in
probably
the town lot.
going to GPS the dock location.
No, but I mean, he's. I don't think the charter guys are gonna shift the way they do business just because we provide this place for them.
All right.
Let me say one more thing and then I'll shut up. I also think that whatever we get now is what you're gonna get. You're not, in my opinion, you're not gonna be able to go back to the land bank next year and say, hey, you know what? That's all working out pretty good. Now we'd like to do this. I don't think I don't think
All
that.
right. So easing into it may only be limiting what we get out of them. Let's ask for everything and see where it goes.
Well, I don't think we're asking for that much, to be honest, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I want to actually, I'm not done actually, because what we've left out here is their new acquisition of the Mickey Rowland property. And we did have some discussion about a boat ramp and it possibly being a good location for a limited size boat ramp. And we have not addressed the addition of this semi-sizable piece of land to Petrel Landing. And when you actually physically go there and visualize yourself towing a 16-foot dory and taking a left onto whatever street it is that leads to the Anglers Club.
New Whale Street.
And I'm sorry?
New Whale Street.
New Whale. And it would be a simple turn into there and then back down to where Mickey Rowland's house is and onto a ramp with a, you know, whether it be, you know, up to 18 feet long, you know, maybe emergency use only for something larger. Or if Children's Beach Ramp happens to be disabled for some reason. But how does the board feel about addressing, you know, now that they will obviously be altering their plan because of the new acquisition, is this a good place to request a boat ramp of some sort? Mr. Bossy?
I think we're trying, I think we'd be getting ahead of them. And I don't think they'd appreciate, I wouldn't appreciate it if I was in their shoes. If anybody came to us and before we released, the land bank released their ideas for this property, as they did with this, with the current one, we saw the plan and we reacted to the plan. If we go in and say, we think you should do this plan, and by the way, we think you should put a boat ramp on this other piece of property that you are just acquiring or have just acquired, I'm just afraid we're going to be really overstepping what we might get out of them. I think we have a real opportunity to get them to open up and say, you know what, maybe we can dedicate a section of this dock for you know, actual real-time water use, not just parking. And I'd hate to keep pushing and pushing. I agree with you. I think it's a perfect spot. It's going to take, but there are a lot of logistics in that. That's what I mean. It's an easy shot for some of us to take there and pull up a New Whale and back down. It's not such an easy shot, I don't think, when you get engineers involved and say, well, you know, this angle isn't right, the code is this, and I just worry that if we try and tie all that into this is just going to get put aside. That's how I feel about it.
Mr. Franzuto? Thank you, Dave.
I think Dave hit on something. I think that maybe we should add something in our letter that says, and we would certainly like to be involved when you come up with some ideas for the Rowland property. But I also got to tell you, having tried to build and having built 2 boat ramps on this island, it's difficult, number one. Number two, the problem with what you're saying, Andy, and I totally agree with you. The guy could back a 16-foot little day sailor down there, no problem at all. But where's he going to put the trailer? Where's he going to put the truck and trailer? Children's Beach, by federal mandate, I got the selectmen they had to designate 8 spots along Easton Street for trailer parking. At Jackson's Point, we had to put in a parking lot when we built the ramp at Jackson's Point. So, I mean, Dave's right. There's a lot of logistics to building a ramp, but I think we're opening the door now, and I think we ought to say, when you guys start
Sure.
thinking about what you're gonna do with the Roland property, we'd certainly like to be involved.
Well, if this was part of the whole Wilkes Square plan, and if a 3 or 4-story parking garage happens to go into Wilkes Square right across the street from Petrol Landing, then maybe there could be some designated trailer parking spots there.
Sure.
Yeah,
But, you know, after those 4 spaces on Easton Street are taken up, I know if I go to tow my boat down there and there's no parking, I have other people with me that stay in the boat while I drive my vehicle and trailer all the way back home, which, you know, is an inconvenience, but it's what a lot of people do. And then either hop on a bike or catch a ride from somebody else back to Children's Beach to join the rest of your party and get out in the boat. It has certainly added time to the launching process, and the people who trailer only, which there are a lot of, as you know. So the parking has been an issue all along the waterfront area. There used to be a lot of parking available down Washington Street Extension, which has been eliminated as well. I like the idea of somehow adding in, you know, we'd love to, you know, continue discussion when they go to plan the adding the Roland property to Petrol Landing. So if you can word that in such a way that gracefully, Mr. Brace, and if the rest of the board agrees to revising in that manner.
Yes, and I had a comment or two.
All right, Ginger, do you have a comment?
No, I agree with what you and Mr. Franzuto have said. I think that's right.
Okay, Mr. Brace, thank you,
Yeah,
Ginger.
two things. You know, in the summertime when it's busy and if I drive, sometimes I'll park down by Sales because there's always spots. And then if it's low tide, I'll walk the shoreline all the way past the town pier, past Mickey's and up into town because it's nicer to walk that way than it is to be on the road. One thing's for sure, in that little corner where Mickey's house is, it's really, really shallow there.
Mhm.
So to put and I'm not the engineer and I'm not Dave Franzuto, but to put a boat ramp in there is going to have to be a bit of an angle, and then there's going to have to be dredging. And right away when we started talking about, when Dave started mentioning charter fishing boats, getting the, you know, secret spot idea of a place to let people out and pick people up again, I started to think, well, it is really shallow in there. And then how are they going to do that? I don't think you get a boat in there at mid tide or even low tide. So, and then the other thing I wanted to say was the reason I put probably in front of the, you know, people who live on Commercial Wharf who were it took up legal arms against the land bank was, I don't know if they live there year round or not. I guess you could go down there right now and peek in the windows and see if there are any lights, but I'm betting that they're not living there. But it'd be, I can either leave the word probably in there, or we can find out if they live there so that we can definitively say, well, these people aren't here during the commercial scallop season. Why wouldn't we be able to do this if they're not going to be there to complain?
Mr. Franzuto? Yes.
You're muted, Dave.
sorry, I was coughing and I didn't want to bother everybody. We've been unloading scallops there for the 35 years that I've been doing it. So, and nobody's ever complained.
Ken Kelly currently still does it.
Ken Kelly, there's 2 or 3 guys that when they move around, if they're in town, that's where they moor. And you know, Reese Bender, Steve Bender. I mean, there's a handful of guys, and you know, and right now they get wet because the rocks, you know, they have to do it over the rocks. But when that gets when that gets sheathing and filled, you'll be able to back right up to the thing, or right alongside it. So I think Scout is going to use it no matter what.
Well, right now, excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Please, Ms. Andrews, speak.
Right now, it's got a rope across it at the street side and a couple of boulders, fresh gravel, and a picnic table. So it's not very user friendly at the moment, other
No.
than sandwich eating.
Yes. I'd have to review their proposed plans from 2017 again. I believe they expect to do some dredging, or propose to do some dredging for the floating dock that they have now. But I'd have to review it again to clarify that. And you mentioned steel sheeting, Dave. I think the plan showed adding more rocks to what they have there, at least in one area. I'm not sure if they're adding steel sheeting.
I thought what they were going to do when Bruce Perry and I came up with this idea a million years ago, they were going to put steel sheet piling and then take the dredge material and fill behind it.
Gotcha.
That's what I thought.
Okay.
You got to have a place to put that material, and I'm not so sure that material is clean enough to be used for landfill cover or for beach nourishment because of the commercial activity that used to go on there. I know that when we did some borings there, we found some oil and some bad stuff. So that material is going to have to go somewhere, and in that hole is a perfect place for it.
Yeah, I oversaw the replacement of a town bulkhead, a couple 100 feet of it. And we had that great idea too. All the slips in front are shallow. So we thought we'll just dredge that out and use that to back. No, DEP came along. No, for exactly the reasons you just said. Found stuff in it. Yeah, nope, they wouldn't let us do it.
It's real silty too. So it's going to have to go and get dewatered. And
so
I think it's a great first step. I think we're getting in line with them.
Yeah, well, they at my first approach to them, they said this was really a good time for us to bring our ideas to them because they feel the litigation may be coming to a close. And they're, of course, hoping to move forward with their development. And they said they would appreciate our input and take it into consideration. So I believe our timing is right.
I'd like to make a suggestion though. I think it's a simple change if I could. Where we say commercial, I think we should say commercial/private. I don't think we should, because we keep saying commercial and everything we've written on this page excludes private use, really. And I think it's important to say, and I think it's going to be important to that we're considering private use too, not just trying to push commercial. You know, if you look at specifically, we'd like to see the western end of the dinghy reserved for commercial use include, well, it should be for commercial and private use. Tom should be able to pull in and load and unload.
Public, it should say.
Public.
Commercial and public.
That's fine. Public, perfect. And there was another spot too, I think the parking spot for these parking spot reserved for these commercial public uses rather than similar to a loading zone. So that would be my suggestion is that we don't push the land bank too hard on our commercial and because it is for both.
I'll have to agree. We do mention it about 3 times in the letter at least. So I don't want them to get the wrong idea, but at the same time, we should be letting them know that, there's a need. There's certainly a need.
Absolutely. That's right. I don't mean to delete commercial. I think Dave's was just /public, and where we say commercial, just /public. So it covers both of them, commercial and public.
Okay.
That would be my change, because we absolutely have to have commercial in there. It's part of our goal, but we're kind of excluding private use. We're saying we want to just give a commercial chunk to this dock. And after the court lawsuit, I don't see that happening if we say that's all we want. But if we want a shared use where anybody can use it, all these people who pay taxes here and fund the land bank can use this, but we just ask how it's being used and what it's being used for, which would be the loading and unloading of catch and equipment, and I guess personnel too. So I just like to see commercial/public where we say commercial.
Board members in agreement?
I think that's great.
Yeah,
Okay,
This is Ginger. I agree.
great.
Miss, oh, well, if everybody agrees on that, I just got to ask Peter. I knew there was something I had made a note about, and I just pulled the letter up on my phone so I could look at it. Did you, Peter, is there a reason that, or did we agree, or what, if we did, why did we say the western end of the dinghy dock?
Oh, that was me. And I suggested that because that would be the closest to otherwise you got a long walk down that 120-foot dock. The western end should be closer to the parking lot access. That was my thought.
I see. Okay. I remember we talked, yeah, I remember. I had made a note that I just wanted to figure out why we did that.
And tell me if it doesn't make sense. I just thought it was much closer to the parking lot. Seemed to me that was the close end of the parking lot. And if you're going to be moving equipment and catch, that's where you want to be.
I think that makes perfect sense.
Yep. Thank you.
Board members, any more comments, additions, changes, suggestions on the land bank, Petrol Landing plans and draft letter by Mr. Brace, which I want to again, on behalf of the board, thank you, Mr. Brace, for sitting down and crafting this.
my pleasure.
Not seeing any more comment. Do we need to vote to move forward to finalize this draft? Shall we work on it some more, bring it back in, discuss it again at our next meeting? What's the wish of the board?
What's the timing like? Are we under a deadline with the land bank to get this to them, or do we have 2 weeks?
I haven't heard anything, but I can't answer that question accurately. I wish I could.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Brace.
I would say, you've got me doing 5 changes here, and I still want to tweak it a bit. I think we'd all feel better if you guys got to see a final version at the next meeting, and then I wouldn't see the changes being anything major at all. And at that point, then we could send it,
Okay.
I would think.
All right. And so, Peter, will you add in somehow, being able to discuss at a future date, any changes that may be made
I wrote everything down that you guys
Okay.
want.
with the Milton Roland property?
Plus it's in the minutes, so.
Okay, thank you, Peter. If,
Okay.
if there's no more discussion on Petrol Landing, we'll move forward. Not seeing anybody looking to discuss any more on that. The oyster lease permit review. Do we have any new news on that? Tara, do you have anything you can relay from Mr. Carlson? Tara may have stepped aside for a minute. I'm actually going to back up to the liverboard regulations to complete that vote. Mr. Sidlowski was out
Yeah,
muted.
I'm sorry. My mom died Sunday, and I had a call from the hospice.
Perfectly
So,
fine.
but I vote okay for the liverboard I
Okay,
approve.
so we have, the motion was made by Mr. Bossy, seconded by Mr. Franzuto to approve the revisions to the liverboard regulations and for it finally to be put together and delivered in person to Ms. Lucy. Uh, We've done the roll call vote. It's a unanimous vote. We're all in favor. Thank you. Okay, now moving forward to the oyster lease permit review. Tara, is there anything you've heard to relay from Mr. Carlson?
I don't have anything new to add, but I'm happy to ask him when I have a meeting with him tomorrow.
Okay, and maybe let him know that Mr. Lambrecht has been attending meetings and giving us updates of his progress. I'll turn this over to Mr. Lambrecht unless any board members have any questions first. Not seeing any. Mr. Lambrecht, can you give us a progress report?
Just continuing on. 3 steps forward, 2 steps back,
Uh-huh.
but continuing on. That's all I've been doing basically.
All right. Have you been able to start the boat in the driveway or anything, or?
No, it runs.
It runs.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, the last time it was worked on was at Glenn's Marine, so I just need to have him go through and make sure the injectors are all good and all that.
All right.
So, there's no issue with that. The steering's all hooked up and most of the wiring, not all of it.
All right. Have you dipped it in the water to make sure it floats?
I'm not that worried about it. If it goes down,
Okay.
I don't care, honestly.
All right. Well, any projections of when you may,
I'm afraid to make projections, to tell you the truth.
okay.
I'm just gonna keep cranking on it.
All right.
And I can go back to work.
Okay. Have you been out there with anybody else? Have you taken a
No.
look at your gear?
Well, I know where it's at. Believe me.
Okay.
Fact is, I just went through the GPS yesterday and went on through all the spots,
Mhm. Okay.
trying to figure a plan of attack.
Can you see your gear through the water from Google Earth or something, or?
Yes, I can.
Really? Great.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
It's unfortunate, to tell you the truth.
All right. Well, we have not heard anything from Mr. Carlson. I'm still going to, stand by his most recent comments was, he wanted to see you get something done ASAP, particularly by the end of 2020. It is the new year. I think, by him not being here tonight, it gives you a grace period of another 2 weeks. He could be busy with Concom meeting coming up, so we always forgive him for that. And him not passing anything on to Tara is, in my eyes, is a blessing to you of a couple of more weeks of making some progress. So I hope you can do that, and I hope you're able to satisfy what Natural Resources Department is looking for from you.
I would love to be able to sit down and talk to him, 10, 15 minutes or so. If I could pin him down someplace, just to try to get understand where I'm at and stuff.
Yeah.
Like I say, it would have been much better way earlier if I could have gotten, JC or somebody just to see what's in progress or what has to be done or had to be done at that point in time.
Yeah. Well, try donning your mask and meeting up with them down at Bathing Beach Road in the parking lot, or
Yeah.
I often see JC at the docks around the time scallopers are coming in. Sometimes he's around 9:30. He's sitting at Children's Beach watching who's coming in, and then he heads over to whichever dock they may be landing at. So they're out there. I believe.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I believe JC went on vacation, but is back now. So
Very good.
board members, any comments from Mr. Lambrecht? Any comments on the oyster lease permit review in general? Not seeing any. Anything else you'd like to add, Mr. Lambrecht? If
Not right
not-
offhand.
I'm sorry?
Not right offhand.
Okay, all right. Well, thanks for joining us again, Ted, and hopefully we see you in a couple of weeks with with something more to add for us.
Sounds good.
All right, if there's nothing else on the oyster lease permit review, moving forward to excessive sand and scallops, which I requested that it lean more towards dredging. I got a call from Miss Andrews yesterday, and maybe she felt I was being a bit aggressive with dredging, and I want to just make it clear to the rest of the board and Tara as well that I'd like to see more studying done. If granular sand will not sustain proper growth of eelgrass, and if hydraulic dredging and depositing sand on the beaches affects, life that lives on the beaches, microorganisms in the sand fleas, anything like that. I know there is a lot of life there. I guess what I'm trying to do is spark people who have the knowledge and the resources to research, is this a direction we should, have a pilot program where we just do a small area and test it? Look into other towns. What are the results from them? I know some other towns on the Cape. Mr. Franzuto is going to look into what other towns are currently dredging or have dredged in the recent past, some stating for shellfish bed enhancement on the Cape. And I'd just like this to be on our radar. If it's going to be something that is not a positive move forward for the health of our harbor, or for the health of the fishery, then I can accept that. But I feel like at this point it's something that we need to study and look into a little more to see if it can be helpful. Mr. Franzuto.
Yeah, I talked to Coastal Zone Management, to Steve McKenna, who's reviews all the permits for all the Cape and Islands town. And there are folks that are dredging and have dredging permits, but they're all doing it. There's a couple reasons you can dredge. Navigation is one, and the improvement of water quality is another. And the project in Falmouth, where they an improvement of water quality, as Tara will tell you, is then by default you improve your shellfish habitat or shellfish production or whatever. But the project in Falmouth was to dredge to improve water quality in that pond that drained into the sound. But back to McKenna. McKenna says that, to his knowledge, nobody's dredging to remove sand to improve eelgrass. Everybody's removing sand to improve water quality to help the shellfish. It's kind of, the back door, if you will. But I also asked him, and I've known Steve for 30 years, and I also asked, he said it's not outside the realm of possibility to get a permit to do that. You just have to go through the process to, because I explained to him that you were talking about the sand covering areas where there used to be eelgrass and the migration of sand. So I'm not so sure that you couldn't get a permit to do that. But currently, nobody's doing dredging to remove sand to help eelgrass.
Okay.
Or is that, I mean, Tara, what, you know, dredging improves water quality and water quality helps shellfish, so.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any projects where they're dredging just to remove sand to help shellfish. Usually it's just like Dave said, to improve the flow of the water, which in turn, you know, improves water quality and helps the eelgrass. So, I mean, I'm happy to look into like the various projects that are going on in the Cape and Islands and see if there's anything unique or different that people are doing because of shoaling effects. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a lot of experience with it, so
Yeah,
it would be a new venture for me.
I just think, you know, and Steve's pretty realistic and he's permitted an awful lot of projects over time, but one thing he said to me was, well, how much sand would you remove? How much, you know, how to what, I guess, to what depth? You know, when you're doing a navigation project, you say, okay, you want to go to 6 feet or 8 feet or whatever. You know, and that, and interestingly enough, in all the, like, I'll use Pulpus Harbor as an example. When we dredged Pulpus Harbor a couple of years ago, we revised those plans to actually go around any existing shellfish that was there. We actually changed the shape of the channel so we wouldn't have to deal with eelgrass, which is a chicken way out of it, but it's what you do to get the project done for navigation. So I, you know, he said, well, how deep would you go? And I don't know, because I remember Andy or somebody said something, you know, to get down to the substrate, to the mud layer, whatever, something like that. I just don't know how you would gauge that. And how you would physically do that. You know, you couldn't use a hydraulic dredge or a cutter. You know, the cutter heads are 4 feet square.
Well, my
I don't know how you would
idea,
do that.
Dave, if I may butt in, my idea really came from like watching Bering Sea Gold show, and you actually have a diver
Yeah.
at the end of the tube hydraulically removing the sand from the bottom. Of course, they're looking for gold, but I would like to think that if you actually had somebody hands-on with a dredge rig like that,
Yeah.
he can watch what he's doing. He can
Mhm.
see how much he's taking, and he can see the difference in the soil as he's removing it, and
Oh,
stop and continue to move to the side
no, that makes perfectly good sense. No,
and
now that you put it in that context, I've seen that and that show, and I totally agree with you. I see what you're saying. You could have a guy down there with a big sucker head and just removing that top layer of loose granular sand. So I guess
exactly.
the answer is there is a way to do that.
Yeah, yeah. It's just a matter, you know, is a rig like that available? Is it worthy to pursue a test site? I mean, we were talking recently about the fast ferry showing up the Horseshed area. I've noticed in a lot of the bends on CO2 that there are areas that used to be heavily populated with eelgrass, and now it's heavily covered with sand, and I've yet to see the eelgrass poking back up through that sand and replenishing itself. And I'm only putting together the few comments that I get. You know, a couple of years ago when we were able to meet at the meeting room, and both Cormac Collier and Jeff Carlson were there, and we were talking about their eelgrass project, the Land Council's eelgrass project, and he stated that, you know, I had asked him specifically, can the eelgrass grow in the granular sand we find on the beach? And he said, probably not. It needs that muddy substrate for its root system. And then Jeff chimed in that some people who've set moorings in the same place every year, they used to set them in 6 feet of water, and now they're setting them in 4 feet of water. And that, to me, that's telling me that we've got a lot of sand on the bottom. And if it's detrimental to eelgrass beds, what can we do about it? What kind of action can we take? And I don't want to go into it aggressively. And I think now maybe I've painted a better picture of what's in my mind of what I'm, proposing is I would like to think it would be minimal impact and simply on a study basis at this point. Mr. Franzuto.
But, Tara, you know all those eelgrass guru grower guys, the ones that do all the studies. Maybe this could be one of those things. Ask those guys, Fred Shorter, you know all of them, and ask them. Well, let me ask this question: when the land bank or land council, and I don't want to confuse them because one I love and one I hate, but anyway, the land
That's honest.
council did their planting. I know that some of them use those mats with the eelgrass in them. Do others just free plant into the sand?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys caught the Great Harbor Yacht Club presentation that was online right after our survey that we did in September last year with Stephen Heck. So there's a guy down on the Eastern Shore named Bob Orr.
Oh, yeah.
And he did a lot of free planting of eelgrass seeds in Asteague Island, I believe, and off of Chincoteague Island. And it was very, very successful. And so we've been in conversation with him about doing like a pilot project here where we collect the seeds in the spring and we can hold them in our tanks in the hatchery throughout the summer until they're ready to be planted, and do like a, little pilot project somewhere in Nantucket and see, if that's a viable option for us. But yeah, we are in contact with, some of the head researchers for eelgrass and people that have done a lot of studies. So we're definitely, focusing more on habitat as we move forward. I think we've got the shellfish thing down, but if we don't have the habitat and water quality, then,
Right.
it doesn't make a lot of sense. So
Would you talk to them about this idea of moving the sand and planting into the substrate? Would you talk to them about that idea?
yes, I will.
See if that makes sense, and maybe we can tie the two together where we do 100 square feet of sand removal planting and 100 square feet, or I'm just throwing numbers out there, but of in the sand, and see if they think it would make a difference.
Sure.
Thank you,
Think about
Tara.
something like that, Mr. Lowell.
Dave, thank you for taking that and running with it. I appreciate that.
No, it might be, I'm just saying, it might be what we're doing wrong. Because
Well, you never know until, a little more, we need the right, the scientist mind, the biology mind all to come together and take the statistics that are happening. We know the sand is there. We know it is washed off the shoreline. And we know we're lacking a lot of eelgrass and it's not making a comeback. So let's just, if we can implement, some studying into this, it'd be interesting to see what the outcome could be. Thank you for all of you for hearing me out on this and adding your your 2 cents as well and your willingness to continue with some research. Anybody else? Not seeing anybody else, we'll move forward to our new heading, Health of the Harbors. Mr. Franzuto several weeks ago said what happened to our hazardous materials discussion, specifically the stickers that the NSA, Shellfish Association, was willing to fund to be placed on all dumpsters that would allow us to put them on their dumpsters. I believe it was Toscana said they would not allow us to put them on their dumpsters, but they were the only ones against it. But we have not had a meeting at the Shellfish Association yet. And I'm hoping that they verbally agreed to do this. I think it was about $1,000 worth of stickers. And it'll be the first thing I bring up at their next meeting. So, but while we're on Health of the Harbor, here we are talking about eelgrass and dredging and trying to enhance some eelgrass growth. Every time I see these green lawns in January and February, and these green lawns turning blue, they're so well fed. What can the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board do to implement more restrictions or not implement, suggest, create awareness to slow down the use of the fertilizers that are adding the nitrogen to our harbor? I know we have plans in place, and I'm hearing a lot of people say they don't think it's enough. And I guess we as an
Mr.
island.
Chairman.
Ms. Andrews, please.
Well, at some point several years ago, I suggested a Lawns of Shame page on, some social media thing. And, if you don't have to identify the owner or anything. You could just have drone pictures of the
property.
The unnatural greenness pictures. I don't know. I mean, it just I don't want to go all New York Post about it. Supposedly, we're all ratting each other out here in a snake pit of envy. But but that was my idea. I don't know.
Well, what a great start. I like that. And all I'll ask is the rest of the board members knock this around in your head, and let's any suggestions that we can look into and move forward with for an improvement of the health of our harbors. Just knock it around and come back in 2 weeks with any ideas that may have shaken out.
I have a couple ideas. I also want to know why Dave Bossy looks like he just got off the beach with his red face.
I can't start to fade. I got to get down.
Like I'm ready for the morgue, for God's sake. I need to get done.
Mr. Bossy goes out for a lot of walks, whether it's windy or I think he was just out walking in some 20-mile-an-hour winds, huh,
Yeah.
Dave?
Absolutely.
I hate to digress, but mother of God. He's got all that hair and he looks healthy. It's just really upsetting.
All right, Mr. Franzuto.
I'm sorry.
Anybody else on Health of the Harbor? If not, moving forward to new business update on Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee efforts. Mr. Brace, please.
Basically, just a reminder that at our next meeting, the town's coastal resilience consultant will be presenting to us as a stakeholder It'll be about 30 minutes. It'll be during our meeting. Between now and then, I'll endeavor to get the links to other entities that Arcadis is going to present to so that we can attend. We can get a sense of how it goes and maybe generate questions for them for the January 19th meeting. You know, for instance, Planning Board, Conservation Commission, HTC, whatever ones I can get from Vincent Murphy, and that'll just pass them on to you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Brace. Comments, questions, Mr. Brace? Coastal resiliency? Not seeing or hearing any. Public questions or comments on anything in tonight's meeting? Not seeing or hearing any. Recap or items for our next meeting? Anybody like to add anything? Mr. Lambrecht, are you making ice cream there? You're on mute, but thanks for joining us. Riley, thanks for joining us. And also Kona, thanks for being there. I'll accept a motion to adjourn if there's nothing else.
So moved.
Second?
Motion's made by Mr. Brace, seconded by Ms. Andrews to adjourn the meeting. Mr. Sadlowski,
Aye.
Mr. Franzuto,
Aye.
Mr. Bossy,
I,
Mr. Lowell votes aye. That's unanimous for adjournment. Our next meeting is January 19th. This meeting is now concluded, 6:18 p.m.
see you all then.
Goodbye.
Bye.
So long.
2 weeks.
Everybody stay healthy out there.
Thank you, you too.
Good night.